Well, for Tech Tuesday, what we're talking about is the biggest leaps that we've made in the last 10 years. And we're talking about things that are obvious like artificial intelligence, blockchain, cryptocurrency, augmented reality, virtual reality, but there's some that you might not have thought about as much. For instance, in neuroscience, the most fascinating thing I can think of is that they've made extreme advances in neuromodulation. Neuromodulation is fascinating because, your muscles put out electrical signals, through your nervous system. And we're getting much better at picking up on those signals and understanding what they mean. And so we've gotten to a place where they can implant a node into your muscles or into your brain, and it can pick up your energy signals, and you are able to control devices by thinking about controlling the devices. Your mind sends a signal that would have normally gone from your brain to your arm, for instance, and that signal is picked up by a neuromodulator, and it is interpreted in the, I suppose, limited number of ways that it could be interpreted. The signal has a certain frequency, it comes in a certain location, it comes in a certain interval, and so they understand that when this signal comes, it's meant for this purpose. But the real reason I wanted to talk about this subject, of course, knowing what's been happening in the last 10 years is a great way to understand where to go to make money. If somebody had said to you in 2010, social media is going to be the thing over the next 10 years that is going to grow like crazy. Well, we knew at the point in 2010 that social media was one of the great advances from the last 10 years. And then it turned into an industry over the next 10 years. So I imagine that's what's going to happen with any one of these industries that I'm mentioning now or about to mention. But I want to start off talking about a real risk that is associated with the industries that we're mentioning. The idea is that there's global grand challenges. And some people will say that there's overpopulation. Some people will say that it would be better if we had more government control to tackle things like climate issues, if that is such a thing, or to tackle such things as global poverty or global pandemics like we're experiencing right now. And the tech industry has become increasingly socially conscious to the point that I would say that they're almost socially controlling. But we went from an internet that really didn't care about anybody but itself. I mean, we had Napster, we had all of these, just homemade applications that would allow us to trade information in all kinds of ways. And it was fascinating, but there was a real kind of wild, wild west feel to it. If you remember going back on the internet in 2002, 2005, this was before social media. We still had Google, but it wasn't as good as it is now. And we had some applications that we could use for very specific purposes. And for instance, Sean Parker didn't care if he was disrupting something or if he was just making something cool that was useful. And it immediately changed everything because of the implications of just what the internet is. But over time, the tech community has become very political. They've become very politically correct. What you can and cannot say. Try to say the word retarded in the comment section of Yahoo, it will get bleeped out or put into hieroglyphics or whatever you call them in order to indicate that there was a profanity there. Well, that's because Yahoo has decided that this is a bad word. And it comes down to the fact that, these companies are in California. And it comes down to the fact that, there's a certain culture in California that, is very pervasive and has these sort of soft values of understanding and compassion and, giving everyone equal treatment, which is nice. I kind of like to have a world that was a little bit rough around the edges. This smooth, soft, suburban veneer is not terribly attractive. It's definitely not sexy, that's for sure. But there's a real risk with this, too. Once, your global providers start to have political opinions about the way you should live or the way your government should run or the way your government should treat you, especially because they have so much power, they have so much insight into who you are. This is something that has exploded. This issue, this goodness of social consciousness mixed with the, I suppose you could say, badness of a controlling mentality, a megalomania that can emerge from such power. And we've made another industry that we've made tremendous progress is data science. With artificial intelligence, we can categorize, we can draw connections between data that we never would be able to as just normal people. We are able to use cameras and sensors and all sorts in ways that were never possible before. And now 5G is about to come on the scene as well. So these sensors will be able to work on overload. We'll be able to put sensors on things for the smallest reasons. A sensor cost a penny to make. And now we have the 5G and artificial intelligence to process the information. It's a whole new world, but it's a dangerous world because suddenly we have all the tools necessary for global surveillance state. The same control that Stalin had over USSR, or that Mao had over China, or that this Xi Jinping has over China right now is it's a contagious economic reality. It's a contagious social reality. And China is definitely interested in surveilling the whole world if they can. They would definitely love to have control of everybody. That's why United States has banned Huawei from using any sort of United States networks. And Britain has made an agreement to do business with Huawei because of the advantages of it, but there's also terrible risks. And it's already beginning to undermine the global intelligence community that United States, Britain, and several other important countries all participate in. It could be, the idea is that there's 5 countries that all share their intelligence freely, as though it's just, we're all brothers here. And that is England and China, and I think, not China, England and United States and Australia, and I believe a few others. And now England has perhaps compromised their networks, their basic networks of communication, so that China can look in on anything at any time. This is the fear. And China wants to do it, so it's not a unrealistic expectation that they would do it, that they would do anything they can. And there's been other news articles that Saudi Arabia has been doing the same thing. They've put spy equipment not equipment, but features into applications, and Saudi Arabia has relaxed protocols to participate in the American infrastructure just because we have such a close relationship. But they've already started to demonstrate that they're not necessarily trustworthy actors in such an open connection between United States, for instance, and them. But it's more than that. You go to England and there's a video camera on every corner. You walk down the street, even in here like in Ukraine, where people are very much more private and they're not so nosy and they're not so bending over backwards to get into your business. There's just more of a sense that the government just doesn't care about you here. It's not that they're, overly controlling. They're just, doing their own thing. But if you are in the center of Kiev, if you're in the center and you're walking down the street, if somebody walks up to you and punches you in the face, I think it would take you about 15 minutes to find a camera that caught that, because there's cameras on every building. Schools all have cameras on them for children. If you're smart, you have one of these camera ringers on the front of your house. You can catch who's stealing your packages. You can catch crimes that are taking place. The other day I heard a man was standing in the entryway of a house talking with another young man, and he confessed to a murder. The homeowner heard the confession, called the police, and he actually ended up getting arrested for this. So there's surveillance taking place all around you. Now, the newer, younger generation is much less likely to have read books like 1984. They don't remember Soviet Union. And what's happening in China, it's difficult to condemn China just because of the stance the media takes on China and the benefits we've received from them economically over the last, 20 years has been extremely significant. I mean, the entire world is experiencing abundance because of, you could say, the sacrifices that China has made, sacrificing their citizens and their environmental quality and their reputation around the world. I mean, I think 10 years ago, when I was in university, China was generally respected by most business students. It was like, wow, China, they're really doing it over there. They're coming around. They're growing towards the West, and look at how much money we're making, and look how much money they're making. They have this many billionaires now. Wow, a success story. It'll be one of the great stories of human existence. It was the rise of China out of poverty as a result of interacting with other economies. But Xi Jinping, as much as he pulled it all together in the beginning, or did a lot to enhance the productivity of his society that he's managing, in the beginning, it's almost like obviously he's much more thin-skinned than you would hope any leader of any country would be. Them trying to hide this coronavirus is just ridiculous. You spill milk on the table, instead of trying to call mom in the room to help you clean it up, you do everything you can to help her clean it, to keep her out of the room, while the milk spills on the carpet, creating irreparable damage. Now it's going to smell like spoiled milk in here forever. And that's sort of what it's like around the world, in a way. China, I think, probably this virus got out of the Wuhan facility. They were working on it. Yes, it came from bats, like they said, but that doesn't imply that it didn't come from the facility. Probably they were embarrassed about it. All of a sudden, one of their doctors didn't follow protocols, and he got infected and walked outside and infected a bunch of other people. And, it takes a couple weeks to find out what's happening, and before you know it, you've poisoned yourself. What kind of story is that for the world stage? China's already in the middle of a trade war. They're already in the middle of a conflict with Hong Kong, and now they have this to worry about. That's one way to look at the story. Another way to look at the story is that they poisoned themselves, knowing it would spread around the world, to cripple world economies who are actually ready to hold them accountable for some of their behavior. Each one of these stories is equally likely for different reasons. But the result is unacceptable either way. China hid tremendous danger from the rest of the world. China has the blood of the international community on its hands due to negligence. Someday when China rules the world, I'm going to regret having said this in this podcast. No, stand up for truth. Let's do it. One final thing on this point is that, we've made major advances in the last 10 years in this CRISPR, genetic selection, genetic engineering. The field is, digital biology. But we've made tremendous advances in the last 10 years, so tremendous that the idea of selecting your sperm and egg to put together based on the potential to get the best possible result is actually almost here, if not here in some places already. If you're, for instance, a billionaire and you have, your wife and you want to have a child, but you want to make sure it's the best possible child that you could get. I mean, what is the smartest you can make us? What is the most talent you can get out of us? What is the best physical features? Maybe this man is not particularly good looking and his wife hopefully is better looking than he is, but, maybe they're both fantastic looking and they just want to make sure that those good qualities are passed on properly. It's not just about appearance. Like I said, it's intelligence. Intelligence would probably be the first one, or avoiding disease. Like maybe there's a history of some, multiple sclerosis in the family, and you'd like to make sure you don't pass on those specific chromosomes that are likely to cause that. It's wonderful. So that it really is a situation of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, because there are still going to be young people accidentally getting pregnant all over the place, and those children are going to have to compete with genetically selected. We're all going to have to compete with genetically selected human beings. Luckily, I'm already the age that I am when you think about that. I got 10, 20 years more of runway before the superhumans take over the earth. And that's fine with me. Maybe my children can be stronger too as a result of this. Maybe we as a human race will get further because we'll have more geniuses, perhaps. We'll have better piano music because there'll be better pianists or more of them. Just could be so many good things coming from our population. But the reason I mention it in conjunction with the surveillance state of the last, developing before our eyes, the reason I mention it is because the ultimate discrimination that a government who controls its population can do is look at you genetically and decide if you deserve to live, decide if you deserve to have children at all. They could decide what happens to your children, of course, once they're born, but that's a different discussion. But you don't want to be prevented from life-saving medicine or from eating or from living in certain places or receiving the best possible of anything just because you're not genetically superior in terms, that's a terrible thing to say. But let's say genetically, you have some genetic vulnerabilities and you don't want that to exclude you from having your best life. From, in some cases, having a life at all. Imagine if we were in Nazi Germany and they had taken over the world. And now all of these technologies are coming out. And what do you think would happen? How do you think they would treat people? They'd go through and DNA test everybody and decide that 10% of the tests are just completely unacceptable. And let's escort them out of the city. They disappeared. And a few other industries we should mention for Tech Tuesday is cryptocurrency. That is new. Business strategy, the lean startup concept has really, really materialized and come into its own in the last 10 years. And so is business software. There's business software now that can apply intuitive workflows to your business that you might not have even thought about. And it's based on, concepts of lean startup. It's based on really advanced business models that are available in the management academic community, for instance. Those have come a long way, and they really can help you. They're very intuitive. Some of the most basic would be, for instance, tax software or planning software. Intuit has great software that would fall into this category. Energy, clean energy, we talked about it last week. It was never about the clean energy not providing energy. It was about how do we hold it. And now we've gotten to there with, Gigafactory and battery packs. And if you want my advice about a business to buy into as soon as possible, it's that Tesla. I don't care if they're going up and down. I don't care if their stock price is $500. Get one share if you can, because that is the stock to hold on to. They have 6 gigafactories now, and world maturity is something like 100 gigafactories. So what we're looking at is a company that wants to grow 20 times. Has already plans to grow 2,000%. Something to think about. But the problem is you never know when to buy. Because it goes up $50, it goes down $50. Just pick a time when it goes down and get in, and be glad you got in. Digital manufacturing and 3D printing. Imagine, diversified manufacturing. That is the name of the game in light of the way this whole China episode is taking place. Why are we having all of our manufacturing in one place? And I'm telling you, 3D printers have really come into their own since like 2015. High-speed carbon printing. That means you can print components for anything. And they're harder. Once that carbon solidifies, it's much harder, carbon fiber. So we're really to a place where we really can create components, especially for prototyping. If you have a machine you want to create, you can 3D print all of the components in probably 1 or 2 days, and you're back to your prototype. Food technology, we've gone from eating real meat to plant-based meats where they've learned how to alter the cells of plants to be more like meat, the proteins. AR and VR. And the real challenge of this section is to Identify what has taken place in the last 10 years. What are the biggest breakthroughs in the different industries in the last 10 years? Industries such as digital biology, artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, energy. What are the innovations that have taken place in the last 10 years? And, how can you participate in that industry? And it's just like anything else. You start off educating yourself about that industry, and then you establish your identity. So you need your social media and your website. How much you're going to use them will be ultimately determined by the type of business that it is, but it doesn't hurt to get it started in the beginning. And then you're going to want to develop your product or your service. So are you creating original content? Are you just want to deal in the idea, and the implication of the idea is way over your head? Well, writing out the business plan will at least provide you with a flag that you can wave to the community that says, I have an idea, I have a project, I have a thing I'd like to work on, and you're committed to it at all costs. And that's what writing a business plan indicates. It gives you something to believe in. Just like religious groups have their religious texts. Well, your business plan is something you can hold on to fervently and passionately. And that fervor and that passion will wear off on the people you share it with if you're active, if you're not scared. The challenge of our Tech Tuesday, and let's just wrap it up here, is that we want to pick the best business models to pursue. We want to frame our passions in a way that is relevant now. So you need to know where we're at. And so I highly advise you to look into industries that I have mentioned, maybe find something for yourself. These industries are the ones that are going to make billionaires in the next 10 years. So good luck.